What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another instant reactions video. Today we are here to dive into this Detroit Lions 30-20 win over the Minnesota Vikings, earning their 12th win of the season. I believe that ties the most in franchise history in a single season, as well as sweeping the Minnesota Vikings. So let's get it started. I'm hopping back in here a little bit later before I upload this thing because the results are in. The Detroit Lions will take on the LA Rams in the first round of the NFL playoffs. That's right. The Green Bay Packers won, so they got into the playoffs. But as well did the LA Rams. They went for 2-point conversion, and they got it. They ended up getting a stop defensively by forcing a fumble, and they win the football game, man. That is it. The Detroit Lions will take on Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams in Ford Field next weekend. That is your round one matchup. Honestly, it doesn't get any better than that. All right, part of me is like, how does that work out in NFL? How does that happen? But at the same time, as a fan, it doesn't get any better than this. The LA Rams are obviously playing at a really high level. I'm not going to break this game down, but I obviously like our offense, Matt, how we can match up offensively in this game against this defense. However, you do have to worry about Aaron Donald because, you know, Aaron Donald's the best in the league, one of the best in the league. However, on top of that, offensively, they have been one of the best offenses with Kyren Williams, Matthew Stafford, and Cooper Kupp all playing. Now, Puka Nacua, he's setting receiving records as well. So here we go. Here we go. I mean, all the connections, Jared Goff, Brad Holmes. You could go deep with this one, man. There's a lot of connections here. It really doesn't get any better than this one, man. Stafford coming back to Ford Field to take on the Detroit Lions. Are you kidding me? The team that basically kept us out of the playoffs last year because they didn't get it done. Boy, I'm going to leave it here, man. We know our matchups. LA Rams, round one. Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, man, we are back with another instant reaction video, and today it is just that, man. We're going to be reacting to this Lions win. This is not a full breakdown video. I have not rewatched the game yet, so there's a lot of things that happened that I don't know exactly what happened. I saw it, but I don't really know what schematically took place in a lot of situations. The first thing that I have to start off with before we get into anything here is the injury updates that we have, as well as playing starters in this game. There was really no question coming in whether or not the Lions were going to play starters. Dan Campbell had told us weeks out they're going to play. You know, these guys can rest when the season's over. So we knew these guys were going to play. Plus, there is a potential to move up in seeds, though as of the time of recording this, doesn't seem like Washington's going to help us. They wanted to for a second, and they're like, actually, no. But Philadelphia, I think that game's over. All right, I don't know. Maybe by the time we're watching, it's like, no, Philly came back and won. That game looks over. All right, that game looks over. I hope at some point we get to play Philly. We you know, I don't know. I start off with the injury updates first. Now, the positive is it didn't seem like there were a ton of serious injuries, really, outside of two. The other ones, guys were just getting banged up, and it felt like, man, because you're playing your starters, it's like, of course, everybody's going to get hurt for some reason in this game, right? Now, every game, usually you walk away with a couple of injuries from each team. As unfortunate as that is, that's usually how it goes down. But for us in this one, man, it just kind of felt like they were happening left and right. Brian Branch, Alex Anzalone, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Positive is all of those guys basically returned. Brian Branch returned. Alex Anzalone continued to play. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, he returned, but he was kind of on and off the field a little bit. The Lions kind of started pulling him back a little bit in that one, but he plays through like everything, so I don't have much concern with him. The two major ones, though, however, are Sam LaPorta, that they were talking about it killing the energy in the stadium. Man, it felt like it killed the energy in the chat. Like, I know for me, like, as exciting as it was, man, we're winning in this game. We want to end on the right note, and man, with how good he's been, they're showing the graphics of the records that he's setting for receptions and where he's at in terms of the, you know, the yards leaders as a rookie, as a tight end. And to see that news was just devastating, man. It was devastating. And obviously, the Lions weren't super deep at tight end in terms of health. Dan Skipper played a lot of that kind of jumbo package for us in this game. We actually threw him a pass, and he caught it, which was pretty awesome, by the way. But we were kind of forced into that a little bit. It was also something that we had come into the game doing anyway, so it just made sense. We did have James Mitchell. We did not have Brock Wright. He's missed the last few weeks with injury, so we'll have to see where he's at likely. And then also Jason Cabinda. Now, Jason Cabinda didn't really play tight end, but we know that he can do it in spots. Same thing with Malcolm Rodriguez. We're a little bit light there. We do have Anthony Fursker on the practice squad as well if we have to go that route. Ian Rappaport, Lions tight end, suffered a hyperextended knee and bone bruise. Now, from a quick Google search, because I'm not a doctor, so I have no idea what this means in terms of how long it's going to take, it sounds like a few weeks to a month that it takes, as long as it didn't damage anything inside of the knee. It should not be surgery, but it's a few weeks to a month. Now, maybe that's just for, you know, a normal person, not necessarily an NFL player. Also, they threw bone bruise on top of that, which definitely doesn't sound great. According to Dan Campbell, he said that it's not as bad as it looked, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good news. And according to Ian Rappaport, it sounds like he's going to miss some time. So could there be a potential for him to return at some point to playoffs? It sounds like maybe, but will he be playing in the first playoff game? I don't think so, but I don't want to go too far into that because I don't really know. Now, the Khalif Raymond one, he didn't really give us much outside of kind of like the same situation or the same thing that he said about Sam LaPorta is the same thing about Khalif Raymond, right? It may not be as bad as it looked because Khalif's looked bad, man, getting tackled from behind like that. However, it also doesn't necessarily mean it's good news. Now, the Khalif one is tough, of course, because of how good he is on special teams, and we got to see that today as a punt returner. By the way, special teams was really good. Jack Fox kind of led the way. We did have a missed extra point that I think was tipped. That still needs to be dialed in. It still gives me a little bit of a concern. But Jack Fox was on one today, man. He was money. However, Khalif Raymond, we know the value he gives there. And then again, now we saw today in the passing attack, without Jamison Williams, some of the shot plays that he can create. And we got that on a little stutter wheel route that he was able to hit up the sideline. So that'll be a tough one. The positive is Donovan Peoples-Jones did have an impact. They are not really the same at all in terms of play style. However, Peoples-Jones did have 2 receptions. I think for the first time as a Lion, he had a little crossing route, which he sat down in the zone hole, which was nice. Yard short, but we ended up going for it. And then also he had a kind of a shot play on a rollout by Goff that took a little bit to set up, but it ultimately did. It took the coverage away, and he was able to get a grab on the sideline for a big chunk. So the positive is I think we have good depth. We also even saw a snap from Antoine Green in this one, but you don't want to lose him, especially because the value that he gives you on special teams, if nothing else. And then, of course, Sam LaPorta, which will mean that in the meantime, James Mitchell's got to step up. Now, we haven't really seen James Mitchell much in the passing attack, but he has stepped in because there's been no Brock Wright, and the Lions like to play 12 personnel. They like to go heavy personnel, so he's kind of stepped into that role. I think his blocking has been on point a lot of the time. Run blocking and pass protection, I've been very pleased with that. But then we saw today as well that, hey, don't forget this guy can also catch the football. Like, this is something that he did back in college at Virginia Tech. The little rollout broken play by Goff where he just snags and plucks that thing out of the air. He's capable. I also really like him after the catch. Not to say he's Sam LaPorta, especially as a route runner. That is going to be a really tough loss because, like we talked about in my last video where it was literally titled at the beginning, Sam LaPorta is the answer. Specifically, we were talking about versus that switch man coverage that Dallas runs. Teams that like to play man coverage, he is one of our best answers for that on the team. And to be without Sam LaPorta is going to be massive because he is, to me, versus most teams, a matchup issue because most teams don't have a great matchup for that. We've seen at times this year, if you don't come in with a clear answer to deal with him and you want to play man coverage, good luck with that. You're going to have a problem dealing with him. So this is a huge, huge loss for the Lions. And we saw the impact of him early in this game. I mean, I think the first 4 third down passing plays we had all went to Sam LaPorta. I think we converted one. One of them was short. He also had a couple of drops in there as well, but it's just how impactful he is when teams like to play man. We want to give the ball to Sam LaPorta. Both of these guys getting injured at the same time, so difficult, is like we saw last week too. We don't see Khalif as much, but both of them are very impactful in terms of level 1 route running versus man coverage. The quickness underneath for Khalif Raymond. We got to see him on a little angle route through the stack last week. Like, those are the things that they can do. So now all of a sudden, you have St. Brown that can win pretty much everywhere, and Josh Reynolds obviously can win, especially level 2, level 3 throws versus man, but you're kind of missing that underneath element now versus man if both those guys miss the same game. So now you're saying someone else has to step up. Gibbs potentially has to become more of a receiving threat. Someone's going to have to be able to take over that role. Peoples-Jones in a different way with physicality, but you're losing that quickness, that run after catch, that short area burst with both of those guys versus their matchups respectively. I really don't know what else to say. I know there will be questions now because this took place that, oh, he shouldn't have played starters, this and that. Number one, we already knew this was going to take place, so if you felt coming in they shouldn't have played starters, that's fine. I don't have any issues with that. I can understand there's pros and cons. There's two sides to the argument. I have no issue with it. When I look at Dan Campbell's approach of playing his starters into this game, number one, I can understand it as they're a young team. They're one of the younger teams in the NFL, and this is a spot that they haven't been in with him as the head coach, so wanting to get that loss out of their mouth, that bad taste, that frustration that you had with Dallas, maybe just not wanting to just put the backups in this game necessarily. And some starters have to play just because you have to have so many players active, but not necessarily just wanting to play, backups in this game and maybe being okay with losing this game. Instead, getting back into the winning column, expecting to win every single week. This is what we do. We win football games. We don't lose back-to-back games. It's not something we've done all season. We win football games. We protect our home turf and just kind of keep it as simple as that. It goes back to the early thing that he said back at training camp years ago when we went around the room and he said, hey, where'd you go to college? Where'd you go to college? People say Notre Dame, Ohio State. And it's like, every game you guys expected to win. Every game, right? Because you guys will go undefeated. You lose maybe one game an entire season. That's the mindset that he wanted in Detroit. And this was back in his first or second year with the Lions where he was saying this. I think it may have been heading into the second season where he went 9-8, that these are the kind of things that he was saying to the team. So Dan Campbell had his mind made up. They wanted to get things right. They wanted to go out here and win the football game and potentially give themselves a shot to move up the standings. We'll see if it happens or not. They wanted to get this thing right, and they wanted to get that taste out of their mouth and get back to what we do, which is win football games. And that's the mindset, and now you're off into the playoffs with kind of that clean slate. But it is unfortunate, and that is one thing that every game there's injuries. Every game there's injuries. So if they're out there, someone's probably going to get banged up, because I remember tracking games, and every single game I come away with 3-4 injuries, both sides. Every game has injuries. It is so rare to find a game where there's not an injury, at least on one side of the field. It's just what happens, and it's super, super unfortunate. Now, takeaways from this game individually. First off, run defense. Kind of disappointed in the run defense in this one. Statistically as a whole, it doesn't look terrible. They stayed under 100 yards rushing. But a couple things. First off, they didn't run the ball a ton because I thought the Lions won defensively by getting them behind the chains. Timely blitzing, tackle for loss against the run, creating sacks offensively. Offensive flags for Minnesota kept backing them up. Our ability to get them behind the chains and also what they did to themselves, I thought was the difference for us defensively, and that's where we were good. And it's, one of the areas where Aaron Glenn's aggressiveness gets to kind of shine. We saw the same thing kind of last week against Dallas in some of the run plays. Some of those run stuffs are also schematic, right? It's not just that the run defense is great. It's also schematically you're doing the right thing to get some of those run stops. And we saw again with another Josh Paschal TFL in this game. Plus, Lions did a really good job at getting pressure, which we'll talk about here in a second. However, in this game, Ty Chandler, 12 carries, 69 yards. It's not a great number, but that's 5.75 yards to carry. Now, I do think, I'll have to rewatch this. It did feel like some of that stuff came from attacking the weak side of the formation, going at the 2-eye, which a lot of times was a guy like Benito Jones, not being able to maybe get in the front side of our gaps at times, and then being able to kind of seal it off, wall it off, and get up to the second level. I thought I saw a couple of runs that took place because of that, and this is a zone rushing team, and if you can't get into your gap and you're caught behind, you're going to give up some chunks, and it felt like that's what happened. I'm not saying this is just because Isaiah Buggs is not here, but I think it's impactful. Isaiah Buggs didn't play bad. I watched the Dallas game, and I didn't think he played bad. So that is something that we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on, but I'll know more about maybe what schematically actually took place there at a lot of those spots when I'm able to kind of rewatch this game versus my takeaways now. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on because the Lions don't really have a pure nose tackle as a backup outside of Benito Jones other than Broderick Martin, who's been a healthy scratch a lot of times this year. So we saw some different front looks from the Lions where, you get Alualu at nose or Ali McNeil at nose, and you get Josh Paschal at the 4-eye. We saw some different looks schematically. It's going to be something to keep an eye on, though. Was great to have Ali McNeil back. Didn't get a sack, but, man, he got a great pressure, brought down the quarterback. Also had an excellent run stop on the tight end, kind of read the play, saw it happen, got off the block, got off the tight end, gain of a yard. So it was cool to see the flashes there from Ali, man. We have missed that. But then outside of that, it was also the pressure from the other guys. It was, of course, Aiden Hutchinson, 2 more sacks in this game, working on the backup interior offensive lineman. Aiden Hutchinson was awesome in this one in terms of creating pressure. He also had a huge run stop on Justin Jefferson, where maybe he was trying to throw it, but a huge tackle for loss. Obviously, you get them in a spot where they have to settle for a field goal instead of getting into the end zone. That was a massive stop by Hutchinson. Romeo Okwara, we've talked about him the last couple of shows. It was like, hey, Romeo Okwara is playing really well in a very small sample size. Well, no John Kaminsky today, and we saw a lot of Romeo. I'll tell you what, I don't know if the stat sheet shows it, but just watching it, the eye test tells you Romeo Okwara was extremely impactful in this game. And I really do think, man, after this one, he's got to get some snaps in the regular season. I mean, I'll know more when I get to watch it back, get a really good sense of it, but this dude has had to earn some snaps in playoff time. I think Romeo Okwara is really starting to look like himself. His get-off looked really good today, and he's been a good run defender all season long, again, just in limited snaps. So I think there's a real positive what we have going on there. I know we're waiting for James Houston, but Romeo looked good. And also, I guess that's part of the run defensive side, too, is not having John Kaminsky. That potentially could have had an impact of it in it as well. On the offensive side of the ball, schematically speaking, I think he saw some similar things game plan wise. Pistol, play action shots on first down, extra offensive linemen, 6 offensive linemen, multiple tight ends, right? Being able to create shots on early downs, limit their blitz by keeping in multiple guys to pass protection, kind of limiting your receiving options. But at the same time, man, offensive line seemingly played really well in pass protection. We were sacked one time on one of the third down situations in the red zone, but we were really good, really outside of that in pass protection. There was a little bit of pressure at times. Goff, good pocket movement for the second straight week, like with Dallas. And also Goff, man, he delivered some good throws. Again, they weren't all perfect, but man, he delivered some good balls today. Shot plays, off schedule, Jared Goff looked good. I mean, there was a couple like shot plays where they felt like they were a little bit overthrown. We had some misses, but outside of really just a couple, I thought he was pretty money today. Maybe he had some opportunities to hit Josh that didn't give him the best chance on some of them. The other one was a PI, but I thought he was really good in this game. I love that the Lions were trying to get Josh to at least one of his incentives. I think he was 1 yard short. I think he was 1 yard short. I hope not, though.
Turns out he did hit his yardage incentive, which was 600 yards, $250K, according to Bleacher Report. Didn't get the touchdown. That would have also earned $250K with 6 touchdowns on the season, but got the yard.
From hitting that incentive, obviously he didn't get the receiving touchdown. Lions were trying to get it to him, but it did not happen. So I hope he gets it, by the way. Hopefully he gets his money. I love the Lions were willing to throw him screens because they were very, they're like, hey, we can just run the ball. Let's just throw him a screen. We're not going to take a shot and be disrespectful, but we're going to give you a chance. And man, did he come close. So I do love that. I love that about the coaching staff, and that's another reason, man, where I think you get that buy-in for the players. It's just things like that. Defensive front, though, Levi, we saw him get a sack. He also, I believe, had a nice little run stop in this game. So, again, we got to see a lot of pieces in the interior. Levi has made some flashes. That's kind of what it's been this season, but this kind of felt like on initial watch potentially his best game. We'll have to see it, but the Lions' ability to create pressure really across the board was there. Again, timely blitzing. Getting them behind the chains was the key thing. We also gave up 2 shot plays where defensively you look at the score 30-20. 2 of them were shot plays. One was the 4th and 1 where it was actually a smart call, I think, by the offense. First off, the Lions weren't shadowing necessarily Justin Jefferson with Cam Sutton, and that's okay with me. Like I don't think we necessarily need to do that. I don't think it's that big of a gap, but he's able to get the shot on Vilder because they got him one-on-one. And 4th and 1, you expect to not necessarily the Lions to give you direct safety help over top, and the Lions didn't because they were trying to keep them from getting that yard. And what happens? They get a shot over top and they end up scoring a touchdown. The other one, I'd have to see the look again. It felt like a quarters kind of look that Cam Sutton was in there. And again, that would mean you don't necessarily have safety help because you have to stay on top. And the receiver going in line on the play, get him caught in kind of a pedal. The transition isn't smooth, and he gets beat over top. So it was really 2 shot plays that gave up touchdowns. I would say the first one, I give them credit because it's really hard to cover him one-on-one in terms of being smart with the play call. 4th and 1, let's try to get the shot now. Lions had Vilder on him. I think that's a smart play call. And then the second one, like that's something where, if Cam Sutton's going to play on the outside, which he has all year long, those are the kind of coverages that you trust him in because we know he doesn't have the long speed. He doesn't also have the length either or the size. So those are the kind of coverages the Lions trust him in, quarters coverage, half turn. And in that spot, right, if he's in that kind of look and he needs to stay on top, he needs to be able to stay on top of those spots. So I still trust him in those spots, but that's really where, 2 of their scores came into play, were back-to-back chunks. But what I give also credit is to Lions offensively found a way to bounce back. And the Lions were seemingly really darn good in passing the ball on 3rd down. Obviously, like I said, Sam LaPorta was short on one, had a couple drops. But really outside of that, I thought Goff played one of his better games again this season. It was definitely the right way for him to end the regular season, getting things kind of back on track.
Lions also had 2 conversions that I really liked in this one that felt directly tied to the Cowboys game. The 4th and 1 where they were able to pick up 1 yard with Jahmyr Gibbs, handoff, no blown block. He's able to get the yard, and then also the touchdown on the pin down block by the receiver, not the tight end, which was an issue against guys like Michael last year. Pin pull, get to the edge, and get Gibson to the end zone. Not to say it was perfect. There was still another short yardage stuff that went for a tackle for loss, trying to set up one of those sweet plays that we like to do. But we did get 2 of those right. Seemed like wanting to correct kind of what took place last week and just pure breakdowns. We'll know more when we get to take a look this week, but a couple breakdowns.
Defensively, we got to see the rotation between the safety positions. CD Deuce, Ify Melifonwu, Kirby, all of them seemingly worked into the game. All of them played together with each other at different points. CD got his interception, which I would expect to see a lot of. I don't know how that rotation is going to work. Are those guys just going to rotate at safety? Is someone going to potentially play a little bit of a different role? How is that going to work once we hit the playoffs? It could just be a rotation. I don't know. I don't necessarily know. We'll have to kind of keep an eye on that one. Obviously, if Branch is, a little bit banged up, then, Lions can go to that option as well, as they could always put CD Deuce in that spot, but Branch came back into the game, so that's a positive. But by the way, we didn't put CD Deuce into the slot when Brian Branch came out, so I just think that's something to keep an eye on. Branch came back in, had a nice little pass breakup, and that kind of takes you back to the 3rd and 30 play that we allowed, right, where Lions won by getting them behind the chains, but the 3rd and 30 was kind of the one exception where you should never allow a team to get that. Now, I'm assuming the Lions were probably playing some cover 3. Why? Because, on all 22, they always seemingly play cover 3 and 3rd and long, and they just kind of have to play the seams. You have to take away the vertical shots. In that case, no one really carried the seam, and they went right there offensively. And it seemed like maybe right through Jalen Reeves-Maybin on the zone. One thing that a guy like Branch does well is he usually picks up the seam. He does a really nice job in the flat, right, picking up the seam routes and not letting them get that if he's playing the flat and it runs by a seam. So in this case, it seemed like the Lions just did not carry it. They had a vertical route seemingly on the outside, and they got right behind where on paper you're supposed to be able to attack a cover 3, but still you still don't want to give it up. Like if anything, you pick up, you carry if that thing goes vertical, and you don't let that get to a spot where you can 2-on-1 with the safety on a 3rd and 30. It's different if it's a 3rd and 5. It's not like that on a 3rd and 30, and the Lions gave up that shot. So on paper, it makes sense, but it still should not happen. I mean, you see it on film, but it probably should not happen that you actually end up allowing something like that. But yeah, I mean, the Lions chose to play their guys in this one. And I think, when you talk about the youth of the team, it does make sense to play some of the young pieces, the Jack Campbells. Like, certain guys do need snaps on this team. And, kind of the offense side of the ball, if you're going to play the quarterback, you got to play the starting offensive line as well. I think that's the big positive, It feels like the Lions, are good to go there. And that's really the key, I think, for everything for this team is what does that look like? And I would say that's a huge positive that came out of this. And they seemingly played pretty well. Obviously, the rushing attack wasn't great. 4 yards to carry for Monty on 40 yards. Not really anything better from Gibbs, 13 carries, 30 yards. He had some nice little 5-yard pickups in there. Some of the tackles for loss kind of blew that up for him in terms of his stat line. The rushing wasn't great. We didn't really pop anything. There was some solid runs, but it wasn't ideal in this game. This is a very good run defense, as well as Harrison Phillips, who gave us a lot of problems last time we played this team, seemingly did again in this one. He seemingly gave us problems, and Frank Ragnall's a dog, but Harrison Phillips is a dog against his own run, and clearly that's kind of Lions' bread and butter is the outside zone rushing attack, and Minnesota, like last time we played them, a lot of times they can have an answer for that because they have one of the best nose tackles, I think, in the NFL in terms of playing a lot of the zone rushing scheme, his ability to quickly get into those spots defensively. So it's not going to be like that against every team. We saw against Dallas the movement we were able to create, but Minnesota is one of those unique teams that really has a piece that can kind of slow some of that out. Plus, you have guys like Daniel Hunter and guys like that also make plays at times well. There was a shutdown run by Penei Sewell, lost a block of Medial and Hunter. He shuts it down. They have good players too. That is what it is. They have good football players as well, but it was nice to get back in the winning column, get back to what we expect, which is winning football and moving into the playoffs in the right mindset, right? At home, have this crowd fired up. We're back to what we do. We don't lose back-to-back games. We win football games, and the expectation is to go play that way. Also a big positive, only 4 penalties for 20 yards. Now, it felt like the officiating staff was really good in this game. They called the intentional grounding, which was clear, but for some reason at times they just decided not to call it. I actually had no issues with the officiating all game long. There was nothing that really stood out. Now, obviously, you could be like, well, you're the Lions fan. They only called 4 penalties on you. True, but I wasn't mad at the holding call they called on us defensively. 4 penalties, 20 yards. Give credit to our guys well. We had the one false start by Graham Glasgow. Outside of that, very clean there, which is huge. But yeah, very clean football game. If there's one positive as a whole, Lions played pretty clean football in terms of the flag department, which is massive in this one. 4 penalties versus 8. That'll help you. And then also offensively, you didn't turn the ball over. That'll help as well. And really, like I said, got back on the 3rd down. The only one that came close to an interception was St. Brown kind of was like, I'm not going to go in there. And I get it. He didn't want to dive down to 3rd and short to try to make a tight window contested grab. In the playoffs, I expect him to go down and get that, but he was a little bit banged up, kind of seemingly pulled out of it, and it got close to potential interception in that spot. But outside of that, man, taking care of the football, and then defensively, ultimately, you play with the lead, and you bring pressure, you get him behind the chains, you're ultimately going to come up with interceptions. And honestly, the way that he threw interceptions again in this game, I know he threw 4 last time we played him, and it was like, whoa, look, man, he threw 4 interceptions, he was terrible. But even in that game, to context, his interceptions came on 3rd and 10. It was an obvious pass. The only interception that wasn't really in a spot where either was going to be a punt or the interception was the final one of the game, right? And again, in this one, 4th down, Cam Sutton picks it off. He's hit as he throws. Lions blitzing was successful if he's in his face, and he throws an interception. The other one, obviously, CD Deuce overshot a couple of receivers. Lions going 2-shell in some of those last couple passes. Overshot one, overthrew the other, and CD Deuce took advantage of it. So that's where he threw picks last time too. That's by the Lions being able to kind of play in a spot where they're able to play with the lead, being able to get after them, and their pressure's getting there. And like we said, statistically, they were a really good pressure team coming into this one. And this one looked even better than what I've seen a lot of the season. It feels good to have a lean Mac. The Lions definitely have pressure pieces. And man, don't let James Houston be on the way, because I'm telling you, Romeo's giving us something right now. Hutcher's playing at his best of the season, and for those guys, about opportunities, it's also about forcing the quarterback to hold on to the football. And I know as bad as those shots were, some of those sacks, they still were forced to hold on to the football. I'll have to see it again, but that's usually what it comes down to, right? We've talked about this all season long. When a quarterback gets it out, when he gets his back foot and the ball's out, you're not going to get a sack even if you have a free rusher. You have to force them to get to number 2 most times to get a sack, even with a free rusher. And you have to give credit to that at times as well, where they're just not getting the ball out of their hands. And even though you don't see it and you get the shots and that's what's stuck in your mind, there also is, at times those guys being able to hold up just long enough for the first read not to be there. So again, we'll know more about that when we watch it back. It is a tough injury with LaPorta. Of course, if you told me coming in, hey, LaPorta's going to get hurt, do you want to play your starters? I'd be like, no, don't play my starters. But at the same time, it is kind of what it is, and I hate it because you guys know me. I'm very concerned about our offense when it plays man coverage, but Sam LaPorta I know is one of our best beaters there, and he, to me, was the difference coming in this year. That's why I was so high on LaPorta, but at the same time, it is a massive loss. But I do understand wanting to get back into the win column. The Lions did that, right? They ended the season right way. They finished it off. It wasn't the prettiest game, but they got it done. And keep in mind, the Vikings were playing for a playoff spot, essentially. I mean, they had needed other things to happen, but they were still fighting for a playoff spot. And the Lions kept them from doing that. They ended their season right there on their home turf and swept the Minnesota Vikings. So overall, it's a good win, and I'll take it, man. We're off to 12-5, off to the playoffs. We'll see who we got. I'm going to leave it here, though. Go Washington. By the time you're seeing this, Washington probably already lost, but who knows? Philly, because Philly, it's over. That game's over, dog. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching.